Welcome to a presentation on maps of Sauk County. My name is Paul Walter. I'm the Executive Director of the Sauk County Historical Society, and I'd like to share with you today some of the historic and modern resources available in the way of maps in looking at history of Sauk County. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that the area we now call Sauk County has existed for a relatively short period of time in the grand scheme of things. People have been living in this area, documented for over 10,000 years. The rigid lines and even the names imposed on the landscape are very recent inventions. The ancestors of the Ho-Chunk, Menominee, and other tribes indigenous to this area have lived here for hundreds and thousands of years. So we'll start today by looking at maps that were drawn long before there was a Sauk County, a Wisconsin, or even a United States. This map from around 1652 shows the general outline of the North American continent, but very little of the interior. If we zoom in, we can see that only one of the Great Lakes is presented on this map, the Eastern Lake of Ontario. And this map was drawn about 9 years after the voyage of John Nicolay to what was now Wisconsin in 1643, and it would take some time for the details of explorations like that to reach map makers. This map from 1658 clearly shows the information that was brought back to Quebec and Montreal from explorers like Nicolay and others, and we see the start of all 5 Great Lakes. If we zoom in, we can see that the western Great Lakes, including the Lake des Poins, which we now know as Lake Michigan, are shown. And this is one of the first time that we see the term Poins on a map. The Poins were ancestors of the Ho-Chunk, and it was the Poins that John Nicolay was sent to contact in 1643, landing near what is now Green Bay. Now, some accounts will say that Nicolay went up the Fox River and crossed the portage to discover the Wisconsin River. That is not accurate, and if you would like a good book on the subject, I suggest you read The Misunderstood Mission of John Nicolay, Uncovering the Story of the 1634 Journey by Patrick J. Young. Nearly 30 years after Nicolay, on May 17, 1673, Father Jacques Marquette, shown here, and fur trader Louis Joliet set out on a 4-month voyage that carried them thousands of miles through the heart of North America to look for a great river they had been told about past the Great Lakes. Father Jacques Marquette was a studious Jesuit priest 2 weeks shy of his 36th birthday. His partner, Louis Joliet, was a 27-year-old philosophy student who had become a fur trader. So in 2 canoes paddled by 5 other voyageurs, Marquette and Joliet left St. Ignace at the head of Lake Michigan on May 17, 1673. They crossed Wisconsin between June 1st and June 17th, then followed the Mississippi hundreds of miles south to Arkansas. And on their journey, Marquette drew a map of their voyage along the way as they discovered things. So in this map, you can see their entire journey from Lake Michigan, here shown as Lac de Illinois, and across Wisconsin and down the Mississippi River. If we zoom in on his map, you can see he's drawn a fairly accurate depiction of what would become Wisconsin. We have Green Bay and the Door County Peninsula, and the Fox River system with Lake Winnebago. And if we zoom in, we can see what would become the Sauk County area and the Fox River, and most importantly, the portage between the Fox Rivers and the Wisconsin River. And if we overlay a modern map, we can see that he has correctly shown the big hook in the Wisconsin River that wraps around Sauk County and Columbia County rather accurately. His map is a little wider than it should be. It was easier to determine longitude than it was latitude. Later, after they returned from their 4-month expedition, his 1673 field map was turned into something more polished. However, it was turned sideways. So here we have the Wisconsin Fox River portage, what is now Wisconsin, on the right side, and across the length of the map, the Mississippi River. Marquette and Joliet descended the Mississippi River to where the Arkansas River joins it near modern Rosedale, Mississippi, and there they turned around. They had confirmed that this was the Mississippi that drained into the Gulf of Mexico, but they did not want to go any further for fear of being captured by the Spanish. So they paddled back up the Mississippi, crossed the Illinois River into Lake Michigan, and returned to De Pere on September 30th, 1673. And here is that same map turned what we would now know as right side up, with north at the top. And again, here is the Wisconsin Fox River portage. Their voyage helped to initiate the first non-Native American settlements in the North American interior. They introduced Christianity to 600,000 square miles of wilderness, and their voyage eventually gave French names to places like La Crosse, New Orleans, and even closer to home, Prairie du Sac. Now we'll look at a number of online resources that you can check out. One of them is the Maps at the Library of Congress, a vast collection of maps really from around the world. And all of the links from tonight that we'll talk about can be found on our Historic Maps resource page. There's a PDF there with clickable links. When you find the Library of Congress link, you will come to this page where you can look at maps. There is a search bar at the top, and I've inserted the term United States there. And when you click on that, you will come up with over 17,500 entries. That can seem a little daunting, but you can refine your search on the left side there, including the date range or the year range that you'd like to look at. So you can look at virtually any century you want, and then further refine the years you are interested in that. So let's look at some of these maps that are archived at the Library of Congress. This one from 1708 clearly shows the influence of Marquette's map. We see the Baie des Poins and the Wisconsin River. This was a French variation of what Marquette called the Meskousing, later changed to Wisconsin. The area shown in pink was known as New France for over 100 years. It was during this time, after the explorations of people like Marquette and Joliet, that this became New France, and fur traders like Francois Baraboo came to the area to trade. Francois Baraboo had a trading post at the mouth of a river that emptied into the Wisconsin near the portage in 1749. His name was later associated with that river, and Baraboo became Baraboo. The French lost control of this area to the British after the French and Indian, or the Fox and Indian War in 1763. And the British didn't really know exactly what they had acquired in the interior, so in 1766, a man named Jonathan Carver was part of a British expedition to explore the new territories and acquired by the British as a result of the war, and possibly see about a Northwest Passage. So amazingly, they were still looking for a Northwest Passage across the continent as late as 1766, and of course we know that some 40 years later, Lewis and Clark were looking for the same thing. Just like Marquette, Carver kept a journal and a map, or made a map rather, and this is his field map of the area, and again, a little more accurate than Marquette's, but still a little bit wider than it should be. Again, longitude was harder to figure out than latitude. Now, fortunately, Carver cleaned up that map and made a much lighter version of it for starters. And this was included in a book that he published several years later on his travels to the interior parts of North America, but all based on this 1766 voyage. So here you see again the area that would be Wisconsin and Minnesota, Upper Michigan, and two of the Great Lakes. And if we zoom in, we can see the area that would become Sauk County. And for starters, we see the Fox River, the carrying place, which is the portage, and the Wisconsin River, again with that great curve that Marquette found on his map. And for the first time, we see a depiction of the Baraboo River emptying into the Wisconsin River. And just below that, the Sauke's chief town. Carver encountered the Sauk people on the Great Sauk Prairie, or what would become the Great Sauk Prairie after them. And he described their village as having 90 longhouses, so probably over 1,000 people lived there, and they cultivated several hundred acres on the prairie. In the bottom of the map, you'll notice that Carver also noted lead mines, just like Marquette did 93 years earlier, and this would have enormous repercussions on the history of this area. So just like Marquette's map had an influence on later maps, Carver's map also had an influence on maps for years to come. In 1783, Britain lost control of the territory it had acquired from France some 60 or 20 years earlier. And at the end of the Revolutionary War, this became a territory of the United States, although it would take many years for the United States to actually assert control over areas like the upper Midwest. Here's a map from 1795 showing the 13 colonies expanding to the west, and the area that would become Wisconsin, known as the Northwest Territory. If we zoom in, we can see Carver's direct influence on this map. We see some of the same notations, the carrying place, the Sauke's town, even though they had already left some 15 years earlier. And we even see a notation on this map quoted directly from Carver's publication talking about the carrying place and the Wisconsin River. And again, at the bottom of the map, we see faithfully copied from Carver notation of the lead mine hills. This is a map from 1816 showing the north or part of the Northwest Territory, the part that would become Wisconsin. Again, information from Carver's map. Land cession treaties had started with tribes in the upper Midwest in 1804. And in 1825, the tribes of the area were called to Prairie du Chien to sign a treaty, peace treaty that would establish boundaries for the various tribes. Here the Winnebago, known as the Ho-Chunk today, correctly are shown with holdings in southern Wisconsin and into northern Illinois. And you see the other tribes listed there as well. This provided for boundaries to settle disputes between tribes, but it also set up the United States for more land cession treaties. They had boundaries for which treaty or which tribe they would have to work with when there was a land cession. So the southern area of Sauk County and parts of northern Illinois were Ho-Chunk territory, but of course that is exactly where Marquette and Carver noted lead mines in the area. and conflicts began to erupt as white settlers entered Ho-Chunk lands to mine lead and take over Native American lead mines. And this led to conflict, and unfortunately the Ho-Chunk were forced to sign treaties after events like the so-called Winnebago War and the Black Hawk War, giving up territory in southern Wisconsin. For a short time in the mid-1830s, the Fox-Wisconsin Riverway became a dividing line for white settlement to the south and east, and indigenous land to the north and west. And if we zoom in on this map, you can see that dividing line of the Wisconsin River. You can see the portage in Fort Winnebago, which was established after the Winnebago War at the portage to control that passageway. And we see a battleground there right in the middle of the map along the Wisconsin River, marking the Battle of Wisconsin Heights, part of the Black Hawk War with the U.S. militia against the Sauk people and other tribes. And we also see a fledgling prairie to Sac on the other side of the river, and we'll talk about that in a second. Backing up just a few years, we come to another map from about 1830, showing again the portage there at the top, and again the Baraboo River for one of the first maps to show the Baraboo River. This time labeled Bonabow's Creek. I think this was perhaps a corruption of trying to read someone's handwriting. The name Baraboo, which the river was ascribed to, could have been read as Bonabow instead of Baraboo. We also see a notation there near Bonabow's Creek, Winnebago villages, so somebody for the first time noting Ho-Chunk villages on the Baraboo River. And one of the first times we see Prairie de Sac, naming the prairie, the vast prairie in southern Sauk County after the Sauk people. White settlements started in what is now Sauk County after the Treaty of 1837 with the Ho-Chunk, which they were forced to sign, giving up all land west of the Mississippi. And as soon as news of that treaty reached this area, white settlers started crossing the Wisconsin River and settling. Sauk County was eventually set out as a geographical unit in 1840, and you can see by this map that it was slightly larger than it is today. It had a series of congressional townships on the west side of Sauk County that would be carved away after a few years. And this was due to the formation of Richland County in 1842. A strip of towns was given to Richland County, leaving Sauk County with that little, what I call, ear in the northwest corner of the county. And on this map from 1849, you can see that a row of townships has been added to the top of Sauk County as well. These would later be stripped off and given to Juneau County. So it took a while for the eventual shape of Sauk County to finally be what it is today. But it did settle down to the shape that we know today. Again, that one township ear in the upper left corner of Sauk County, left over from the formation of Richland County. It would be 4 years after 1840 that Sauk County government would start. There simply weren't enough people to start government until then. And before settlers could even buy land, the area had to be divided up by the federal government in a grid system to create an orderly system for land to be sold. So that brings us to our next resource. We'd like to talk about the federal survey maps that are all online. This work was done using the Public Land Survey System, which divides land into 6-mile square townships and 1-mile square sections inside of each township. The system was used in surveying the public domain lands of the United States beginning in eastern Ohio in 1785 and working its way west. The land that we now know as the state of Wisconsin was surveyed by the federal government between 1833 and 1866, and federal surveys began in Sauk County in the 1840s. And these can all be found at the Bureau of Public Land. You can find that link on the PDF page at saukcountyhistory.org by clicking on Historic Maps. A quick word about how the township system was laid out, and we'll give you a resource on this too. But each of the squares on the right side of the screen is a 6-mile square, and they're numbered by town and range, with the towns going north and south and the ranges going east and west. So we can see that town number 1 is at the bottom of Wisconsin with the border with Illinois, and it goes north. So that means Sauk County is covered by towns 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 going north, and by ranges 2 through 7 going from west to east. And that's important when considering land records here in Sauk County and anywhere else in Wisconsin. They will not reference the town government like the town of Baraboo or the town of Sumter. They will be listed as a section number in a town in a range. So it could be section 36, town 11 north, range 2 east, and that would tell you where you were. So each of the squares on the right side of this depiction are 6-mile square. On the left side, we see the further subdivision of each congressional township into mile squares known as sections, and they're numbered 1 through 36, starting at the upper right-hand corner or the northeast corner of each congressional township, and then zigzagging back and forth. So it's important to know these numbers if you are interested in looking at land records and determining where you are on a map. All of the information that I just covered can be found in a YouTube video we did before and is archived on our SCHS YouTube channel. So if you can find the Sauk County Historical Society YouTube channel, you can find the video on early Sauk County land records and learn more about the congressional township system. So public land survey records, including field notes, plat maps, and sketch maps from federal surveyors, can be found at the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands website. And again, that link is on a PDF resource page you can find on our historic maps section at saukcountyhistory.org. So when you click on that link, you will come to this home page. And on the left side, if you click on search, you will come to this map of the entire state, and you can pick any county that you would like to look at. So of course, we will click on Sauk County. That brings us to this map of Sauk County and neighboring Columbia County and Dane County. And in each of those, you can see squares, and these are the 6-mile congressional township squares. So we will pick one of those. So we have chosen town 12 north, range 5 east, and each congressional township will have a page like this. At the bottom, you'll see section line notes, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And on the upper right, you see indication for sketch map and plat map, so we will look at those. And this is what comes up for Township 12 North, Range 5 East. And this is the Federal Surveyor's Sketchbook map for the town. And it's important to note that on the left side, you can choose the size of the image. So currently it's showing us the second smallest size, but you can click 2 sizes larger than that and get a much bigger image. If we zoom in on one of these maps, you can see much more detail. This is the Township 13 North, Range 6 East. This would be the area today of Lake Delton and the town of Delton. And we can see a lot of things going on this map, including riverways, waterways. We see the Wisconsin River. We also see roads indicated. Again, these maps were made a few years after settlement had begun. So roads and early trails going back centuries would be captured. Also, we see some squares with the letter F inside of them. These are fields showing early settler fields. We see a log cabin depiction as well in section 26. So lots of interesting detail on these early Federal Survey sketch maps. The sketch maps were then taken back to the office, so to say, and were turned into official plat maps so that land could be sold. With the federal township system, you would get a survey of the land you were interested in by a local surveyor and then go to the land office in Mineral Point, pay $1.25 an acre, and hope that nobody else had gotten there before you to buy that claim. On this map, we see those same details transferred from the sketch map that we just saw, including the fields. And this time in section 26, we also see the name Bradley, a very rare occurrence that somebody's name, the name of the settler, is captured on a map like this. We look at another sketch map. Again, the sketch map was what the surveyor was doing in the field, later translated into an official plat map. Sometimes the details do not always transfer from one to the other, so it's important to look at both the sketch map and the plat map. Here is the sketch map for Township 9 North, Range 6 East, which is the area that we know today as the town of Prairie du Sac. So we see a lot of things going on, including the nascent village of Prairie du Sac in the upper right corner with the little hash roads mark there, crossroads hash mark. Down below that, what we believe is Sauk City, not named, in section 12. We also see some fields out in the distance away from the two villages that started along the Wisconsin River. If we zoom in further west, we will see the first dam in Sauk County on Honey Creek, the mill pond indicated there, and some settlement structures there indicated as well as the connecting trails. This is Township 13 North, Range 5 East, now known as the town of Delona. And here again we see some things labeled Dell Creek, as well as a very major trail going north to south on the west side of the township. If we zoom in on that, we can see that it's labeled Trail from the Wisconsin to the Baraboo. And this must have been a very well-used trail to be named like this on the sketch map, and we'll talk about this a little later in the presentation. One last sketch map. This is from what would be now the town of Reedsburg, and right in the middle of the map in section 10 you can see the word ford and some trails and roads leading up to that, and this was the ford or the shallow river crossing at what is now Reedsburg, and this is exactly where the Main Street Bridge is today. Now back to the research page for each town and each congressional township. Not only are the sketch map and plat maps indicated in the upper right, also on the page you can see in the middle of the page section line and other descriptions of where we're at in the township, and these are clickable links to this field surveyor's notes. So if we click on one of those, you can read the surveyor's notes. He's walking along the edge of one of the 1 mile squares within each township and describing the topography, the trees, the quality of the soil, and any other interesting things that come along Again, on the left side, you can enlarge these pages so they are easier to read. And it's worth looking at these if you are interested in a piece of property that is important to you, and you might learn something about the original flora in the area. It's also important to note that the early towns, the governments for Sauk County were different than the current towns that we have today. For starters, there was only 7 towns originally. Starting in the bottom right and working counterclockwise, we have Prairie du Sac, the town of Kingston, the town of Brooklyn, the town of Baraboo, coming back down, the town of Eagle, and the town of Honey Creek. And these get progressively larger as there are more people in the smaller towns, so they are subdivided, and less people in the larger towns. And on the left side, of course, you can see those congressional townships that were eventually given to Richland County. Map like this is important to note for several reasons. We have some early names on here that did not continue. Towns like Brooklyn and Eagle. These are names that you'll find in the 1850s and 60s census for Sauk County. That might be confusing. In those censuses, if you have somebody from the town of Baraboo, they're actually from the northern part of the county and not from the area around Baraboo and what is the town of Baraboo today. And in the smaller words there, you actually see the modern town names for Sauk County. Sauk County is today comprised of 22 towns, as shown here. 10 of the towns in the northern part of the western part of the county correspond to the congressional townships, which are the 6-mile squares. And you can see again the town numbering system on the left and the range numbering system across the top. And that can be helpful in trying to determine on land records where you are. So again, 10 of the towns in Sauk County correspond to the congressional townships, and the rest do not. They are of different sizes. Early maps can give us clues to some exotic place names that no longer exist. On this map, we can see Florida. Just above that, New Boston, which was an early name for the town of Delton. We also have Collimer, which was an early name for Merrimack, the town of Kingston, which became the town of Sumter, and below Prairie du Sac, we can see the village of Horesty, which was named after Count Augustine Horesty and later changed to Sauk City. So maps like this can help us decipher early place names that are referenced. That brings us to our next major resource, which is Canfield's 1859 map of Sauk County. Again, this is on our website. We have an original version of this map hanging in the museum today. It is quite faded and yellowed. Fortunately, Mr. Canfield sent a copy of his map to the Library of Congress in 1859, and they stuck it in a drawer. And fast forward to modern times, it has been scanned into a beautiful modern online version, and you can download this to your heart's content in a number of file formats. So again, this can be found at the Library of Congress. It is also on our website. The map is a real tour de force of not only information but also lithography. Whoever was the lithographer had to do this map backwards on a plate so that it could be printed for us to read, which is absolutely amazing. There are over 1,200 names on the map of landowners that Canfield encountered. I wouldn't say it's comprehensive, but it's you're definitely lucky if you can find an ancestor's name on this map. Because the map is so detailed, we had a volunteer several years ago look through the map online and write down all 1,200 names, as well as over 200 points of interest on the map, and those indexes can be found on our website as well. Here is a section of the town of Reedsburg. So you see Reedsburg on the far right there with the road crossing the ford at the river, now a bridge, and James Babb right in the center of the map, owning 1,180 acres on a prairie, and a note there that 500 to 550 acres are under cultivation. Besides the interior of the map, Canfield has lavishly decorated the border of the map with 10 lithographic scenes from around Sauk County, and as well as noted many of the ancient effigy and other mounds that he encountered throughout Sauk County. Many of these depictions are the only depiction we have of that mound. And again, you can find a link to the Library of Congress version of the map, as well as the indexes on the Sauk County Historical Society website. Search for Sauk County 1859. And there in the middle, you will see one of the flip books that lists the resident or the landowner names that are on the map. If you click on those, you can enlarge them to be flip books on our website, and you can simply open them up and see what's inside. Inside, you will find alphabetical lists of the names listed on the map, as well as the town that they're in, and then followed by the series of numbers which will relate to the congressional townships. So the first number will be the section number, and then the town number, and then the range. So you can use those markings on the side and top of Canfield's map to figure out what town and range you're in, and then find the name of the settler in the particular section. There is an entire video on Mr. Canfield's map of Sauk County from 1859, which we did for Canfield Day in 2021. And again, that can be found along with many other videos at the Sauk County Historical Society YouTube channel. The next resource we want to talk about are plat maps for Sauk County, and there are many of them. A lot of them can be found on our website. Again, at the top of any page, you can click on Historic Maps. There you'll see the dates of various maps that we have for Sauk County, as well as at the bottom, right in the middle, a link to the Map Resources PDF that I've been talking about. On the left, you can also see a link to bird's eye maps of Sauk County, which are fascinating, as well as on the right side, a link to Sanborn maps. Here's a list of the plat maps for Sauk County that we have digital copies of or physical copies of. The ones in yellow are on our website. They are beyond copyright. Other plat maps are not old enough to be on copyright, but we do have physical copies of those here at the Sauk County History Center. So you can come in and use those, or if you like, you can fill out a research request on our website and ask for a particular town from a Sauk County plat map, and we can send you a copy. Again, it's useful and important to know the difference between congressional townships, which are the 6-mile squares noted with town and range numbers, versus the civil town governments that have names. You won't find the names of these town governments in land records. You will only find the reference to the section, town, and range number. So let's look at a plat map from 1893 for the town of Troy. And here you can see all the different parcel sizes for different landowners throughout the town. If we zoom in, you can see a little closer the names. Along with each name, you'll see a number, and that is the total number of acres owned by that person in that particular parcel. That number can also include adjacent parcels, so sometimes you'll see a little squiggle like this that connects Carl Schmaltz with two properties on either side of the road for a total of 211 acres. The 1893 plat map also includes a number of wonderful lithographic plates around the edges, including one of what was then the residence of Dr. Carl Coordinat in Reedsburg, and that house is still there today and looks virtually exactly the same. There were two major standard atlases or plat books made for Sauk County. One was done in 1906 and one was done in 1922, both done by Chicago firms, and they published giant plat books of all of the towns in Sauk County as well as the municipalities. So here's a map of Greenfield, incorrectly labeled township at the top. It should be the town of Greenfield, but nonetheless showing all of the landowners in that 6-mile square. And in the 1906 plat book, you will find communities as well. Smaller communities, unincorporated communities, you might find the names of the property owners, such as in Whitwin on the left. Larger incorporated communities, however, you will not find the names on the individual lots and blocks, but rather just the numbers of the blocks and the lots. You will also see the names of the addition, and they're color-coded as well. So we see some additions to the main original plat of Laval. And those are helpful when looking at property records inside of a community. They will reference the addition or the subdivision that it's in, as well as the lot and block number. Other things can be found in the 1906 and 1922 plat books, including a patron's reference directory. I think you had to pay to be in this, so it's certainly not comprehensive, but if you're lucky enough, you might find your ancestor listed here with a little bit of information. Sometimes they were asked when they came to the United States, if they emigrated, and you might find some other genealogical information there as well. The plat books also contained pictures in the back. You'll find the portrait department, which contains scenes of people, usually men, as well as farmsteads. So if you're lucky enough, you might find a picture of a farm that was in your family. And here's another page that has mostly scenes of different farms throughout Sauk County. There are also advertisements, so these are all advertisements from 1906, including for the E.S. Urswell Furniture and Undertaking business in downtown Baraboo, and that building today is what we know as Downtown Family Dental. The 1922 plat book or standard atlas of Sauk County was very similar to 1906. This time the towns and townships are not colored, however, so it's not quite as colorful, but it has all of the same standard information on rural landowners, as well as beautiful maps of all of the communities in Sauk County, including Reedsburg. So here you can see the original plat of Reedsburg, as well as the additions to that plat. And again, these are instrumental in finding out where an ancestor had property. You can also see all of the other geographical features like the Baraboo River as it comes through Reedsburg, as well as the rail line cutting diagonally across the community. And again, the 1922 Plat book also has the smaller communities as well, and also some interesting history. On the right side, you can see some plats out at Devil's Lake along the west edge of the lake, including Cottage Grove, where there are still 3 houses today. And at the top, you can see a pink shaded development there called Palisade Park. This was a planned development on the top of the West Bluff that was to include a hotel and lots for cottages and houses. Fortunately, that did not go forward as the developer contracted cholera, and everybody assumed that he got it from the water up there, and that was the end of Palisade Park, which was fortunate for us that nothing substantial was built or lasting at the top of the West Bluff. Also inside the 1922, you will see the Patrons Reference Directory. Again, if you're lucky enough to have an ancestor that was included, you might find some genealogical information like Mr. Ed Byrne, who was born in the county in 1873 and married Mary Kelly. Also in the back, again, are illustrations. We actually have a few women shown this time, as well as scenes of homes and farmsteads. Now, some of the later Plat books were not nearly as large, but we do have a variety of them up through 2013. Here's a smattering of them. Here's an ad from the 1921 Plat book for the Wisconsin Farm Tractor Company in Sauk City. And the 1978 Plat book has a complete list of or index to owners, so you can find anybody whose name is listed on the Plat map pages. The next resource I'd like to talk about is Sauk County GIS, which is short for Geographic Information System. And this is the county's website where they have the Sauk County Tax Parcel Finder. So basically it's the modern online version of a plat map. And again, this link is on the Map Resources PDF on our website. So once you go to the tax parcel iFinder site, you will find the map of Sauk County. And you can zoom in on any spot in the county and it will start to populate the details of that area. When you finally zoom in far enough, you will finally come to the parcel map, which looks a lot like a plat map, except that there are no names on it. Here you can see the area right in the center of the screen in green that is now Pewett's Nest, just east of Baraboo, or west of Baraboo. And when you click on a parcel, you will see this little screen pop up, and if you click on more info in that box, you will come up with all of the tax info for any parcel in the county, as well as other information. Of more interest, at the top, if you click on the 4 little squares, you will come up with some different options for satellite imagery. And there are 2 options there, one for 2015 satellite imagery and another one for 2020. So here's the same area with Pewett's Nest and the ravine there at the state property right in the middle of the screen. And again, you can find those layer options on the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Another site that I would like to tell you about is Wisconsin Aerial Photography. That link will take you to this website where we have Wisconsin Historic Aerial Imagery Finder. And this is a free online access to 38,000 aerial photographs of Wisconsin taken from 1937 to 1941. They're available for download by any user without fees or restrictions. So once you zoom in, you will come to a page like this, and every single white dot on this image is an aerial photograph. So if you continue to zoom in, you will come down to a single dot, which you see at the upper middle of this screenshot. And this is the area of the upper oxbow in the Baraboo River here in Baraboo. And we want to see what was here where the Sauk County Historical History Center was back in 1937. So if we click on the white dot, you'll see the aerial photography image for the upper oxbow, and then we can zoom in. And you start to see things come into more clarity. We see the oxbow in the river, we see the dam and bridge on the left side or the west side of the oxbow, and then down on the right side, lower part of the oxbow, the island woolen mill. And if we zoom in even further, you can see indicated there an arrow pointing at the office building for the island woolen mill, which today is the Sauk County History Center. This aerial photograph of Reedsburg shows Main Street right through the center of the page, and on the left side there you can see the Main Street Bridge, the dam, as well as the railroad bridge black below that. And you can also notice some details that don't exist today if you look north of the intersection of Webb and Main Street. You can see that the Baraboo River once extended right up to Webb Avenue, and this later was filled in and buildings were built here, including the cinema, which very recently was torn down due to the flooding conditions. So we can learn something from these historic aerial photographs. The next resource I'd like to talk about is LiDAR imagery. LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging, and it's a remote sensing method that uses light in the form of pulsed laser to measure variable distances to the Earth. This is done from a drone or plane or helicopter, and the light pulses combined with other data can give us dimensional information about the shape of the Earth and its surface characteristics, and give us shaded relief maps like this. So when you click on the link, you will come to the Wisconsin Hillshade from LiDAR page at ArcGIS, and you can see the entire state of Wisconsin. And there is LiDAR imagery available here for 67 of Wisconsin's 72 counties. Fortunately for the Sauk County area, the LiDAR is quite good, and here is what would be Sauk County today, and right in the middle you can see what we call the quartzite canoe, this canoe-shaped area of the Baraboo Hills. And if we zoom in on that, you can see Devil's Lake and the bluffs surrounding it there in the center left of the map. If we go a little to the north and east, we find Man Mound Road, and there you can see Man Mound showing just to the south of the road. So this is the kind of detail that you can get from LiDAR. You can show surface features that are 1 or 2 feet tall. If we zoom in, you can see it even more clearly, as well as the driveways, roadside ditches, and the farm across the street. And here's a view of the bird mound at the south shore of Devil's Lake, very close to the railroad tracks. Sometimes it can be hard to figure out where you are on the LiDAR map, so you can turn the hill shading off. At the left side, if you click on this square, the shading will be turned off. You can see a street map like we see here, and we're down in the Spring Green area. And then if you simply toggle it back on, you can see what the LiDAR imagery looks like for that area. So lastly, we want to talk about how we can use all of this map data to help us tell history. And fortunately, today we have all of these resources that we can combine to learn certain things and help tell the story of Sauk County history. So look at a couple of examples. So back to that 1893 Plat map. On the edge of the map is a beautiful lithographic depiction of the Dawn Manor, which was at that time the residence of S.H. Kerfoot at Newport near the Wisconsin River. And Dawn Manor, as many of us remember, may have seemed like a country estate, but it was actually the last building of the thriving settlement of Newport, a village with well over 1,500 inhabitants and many houses. And that all went bust when the railroad decided to cross upriver at what became Kilbourne or Wisconsin Dells, and the town of Newport died. Most of the houses were moved away to other communities, but Dawn Manor, since it was faced in stone, was left and became what seems like a rural estate. However, by using the LiDAR imagery as well as other map resources, we can see a little bit more of the story of Dawn Manor. So here's the LiDAR imagery for that area up in the town of Delton along the Wisconsin River, which is in the upper right. And we see Highway A crossing diagonally across the image. And then we see the breach, or the area where Lake Delton at the bottom broke through the earth, dividing it from the Wisconsin River in 2008 during that famous flooding. And so here we see the aftermath of the breach. But we can take this LiDAR map and overlay the street map that we have for Newport, and we can see how the village of Newport was laid out on this topography. Furthermore, if we add the current buildings that are there, we can see that Dawn Manor, which is in the bottom left part of the screen, lined up with the street and block system of Newport and fronted on Tenney Street. Back up in the town of Delton, we talked earlier about this trail that was labeled Trail from Wisconsin to Baraboo River. And this must have been a centuries-old trail for it to be labeled like this, well used. And by combining this federal plat map with Canfield's map, we can kind of put some pieces together. So here's Canfield's map, and up in section 17 at the top of the map, you can see the word mounds. And this is one of only 2 spots on Canfield's 1859 map that Canfield indicated where ancient mounds were located. We also see on this map in section 19, the right side of section 19, P. Hickey. That was Patrick Hickey, who was one of the earliest Irish settlers up in this area. We overlay the two maps. We can see that this ancient trail, noted on the Federal Survey sketch maps, passed right by and through the mounds that Canfield indicated in section 17. It also passes right by Patrick Hickey's homestead claim in section 19. So if one wondered how the Irish got up to the town of Delona so early in the 1840s, or why they did, it was because of this trail that led from the Baraboo River and presumably the Baraboo area up into what would be the town of Delona. So it can be useful to combine these maps and see what they can tell us. You can do simple overlays like this in programs like Microsoft Word by simply putting two photographs or two images on top of each other, and you can change the transparency of the top image to see through to the bottom image. So you don't have to have expensive programs in order to be able to do this. I'd like to thank you for joining me on this presentation of maps of Sauk County. I hope you spend some time on our website, saukcountyhistory.org, looking at the resources there and going to the websites that we've talked about today as well as our own. We are a member-based organization. We have over 800 members across the United States who are interested in Sauk County and the work that we do to collect, preserve, and share that history. Again, our website, saukcountyhistory.org, and you can scan the various QR codes shown here to get our mobile app on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store on the left. You can find our YouTube channel on your mobile device with that QR code, as well as the membership QR code on the right side. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for supporting Sauk County Historical Society.